Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 13, Episode 10. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us here for this Friday show. Dave, Steelers wrapping up their 2022 training camp. Last public practice was yesterday. They'll have a walkthrough today and then get ready to hit the road to go to Jacksonville for their second preseason game. That is going to be tomorrow night. How you doing, Dave? I'm glad we're back together like this, and camp is great. It's bittersweet to leave, but there's a bit more normalcy and routine, and really just putting all the focus now on the upcoming season.
Hallelujah!
You excited? You sound excited.
Yeah, very, very, very. No, look. As we talked in the final special edition episode on Thursday night, obviously. An exciting time every year, and especially getting back to Latrobe and all like that. And what'd you have? We did like 16 special edition podcasts, and I think you did 18 total reports, or right around in there from training camp. And it's an important part of every off season, and really learned a lot about this team, through your reporting alone on that. But I would be lying to you if I said, if I told you anything else other than I'm glad that it's over with, because it does put, it is taxing on you. It's taxing on the rest of the staff. And it's just makes for busy days, which we're thankful for. But it is quite nice to get back into what we would consider our normal routine on the site and all like that, and covering games every week.
Definitely. And so the last training camp diary went up yesterday, and just as a quick, camp recap of that day, and maybe just looking at camp at large, the big news yesterday was the scary moment in which Cameron Heyward was injured on the third play of 7 shots, a run play. According to Heyward, an offensive lineman rolled up into his ankle. He was down on the field for about a minute, then walked off and got checked out by the trainers, and seems to be, a relatively mild ankle sprain. So that certainly could have been more severe than what it appears to ultimately be. But that was certainly a moment that had you, at least me, holding my breath for a moment yesterday.
Boy, you're the one that tweeted it out. You're the one causing the people to hold their breath. No, I thought you did a good job in handling that as well too. You kept constantly updating what you were seeing out there, and I don't think we got about 6, 7, 8 minutes in real time, I guess, from what actually happened and what you observed with him going down, then going off the field, that started to get a sense of, okay, maybe this thing isn't going to be that bad. He did obviously leave for a little bit to go get it checked out, and then came back, and if it had been serious right from the get-go, they would have got Cam up in that locker room, right away, getting whatever it was checked out there, and just a good sense overall. And I think it's going to probably prevent him from playing Saturday night, and probably everybody listening to this is fine with that, and it's probably going to prevent him from playing in the preseason finale as well. So we probably won't see any Cam Heyward during the preseason, but it's Cam Heyward after all. So at least they got out of there. I mean, they did have injuries during obviously training camp and all like that. Several kids, unfortunately, waived injured, and you had a couple of veterans in Carl Joseph and Anthony Miller go down, then put on IR. But I think from a overall health standpoint, and I'm sure Carl Joseph and Anthony Miller wouldn't agree, but I think they've got out of this pretty decent. I mean, as opposed to most years.
Yeah, I would say so. Knock on wood and cross your fingers that stays the same way for Saturday's game coming out of that one. But the players who did not practice yesterday, it's a pretty short list overall. Receiver Calvin Austin with the foot injury, Arthur Millette with the hamstring pull, Montrevious Adams with the ankle, Alex Highsmith ribs, Larry Ogunjobi did not work for a second straight day. None of those seem incredibly serious. Austin is believed to be the most serious. We don't know exactly the extent of that. He will not play against Jacksonville. My hope is maybe he can come back for the finale against Detroit. That's a best case scenario that it seems to be. Highsmith is close to a return. Millette seems minor overall, and Ogunjobi seemed fine. So there were no, you lost a starter to a season-ending injury or something, dramatic like that. And so overall, that's always one of the top goals going into training camp. Not that you can control that too much, but you want to stay, relatively healthy, and Pittsburgh has.
And look, you got an 85-man roster now, not a 90-man active roster. So you would think most of the guys that are on this roster right now, a good number of them are going to suit up against the Jaguars. We just already talked about Cam Heyward, probably not, and probably all those guys that have been out, Marcus Allen, obviously Calvin Austin, but I think the inactive list is probably going to be a lot shorter this time around. And I tell you, if there's one preseason game that people should be pretty geeked up to watch during the whole slate of three of them, it's probably this one Saturday night against the Jaguars.
It is. This will be used as the Steelers tune-up game. Mike Tomlin saying that all healthy players will play in this one. So, yes, you would assume that the guys who sat out last week, the Pat Frymoose, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, et cetera, those guys are going to go. TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick. They may play only a little bit, but they should get some action regardless. And the big question to me is, will Najee Harris play? And Mike Tomlin talked about that in his press conference, agreeing with Harris's kind of stance that he wants to play in the preseason, get some action, does not want his first snaps inside the stadium to be week one in Cincinnati. So it sounded like Harris was not going to play this weekend, which says, assuming that's true, when will Harris play in the finale when all the other starters sit? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So we'll see, but I would be okay if Harris didn't get his wish and did get his first carry in week one.
I don't know which ways this is going to go. Every time he's talked on it, and Mike, it seems like they've got opposite kind of maybe opinions on this. I don't know, Mike.
Well, Tomlin said he agreed with Harris that he does want to get him carried.
Well, what I'm saying is I think Najee at one point says, no, I want to play. I'm going to play in one of these these final two preseason games, and then I'm probably not going to play in this next one. And then Mike Tomlin sort of leaves the light on for him. On Thursday. So in other words, I don't know if he's going to play Saturday night or not.
Me neither. If he does, it should be for a very minimal amount of snaps, a drive, a carry or two, one route, and that's good enough. But the less I see of Najee Harris this summer, the better.
He's going to get plenty of work during the season. He'll get introduced to football in the first 5 minutes of that week one game against Cincinnati. That can be his preseason.
Yeah, and I know this is not logical, and people say, well, just get him a couple carries. He gets one carry. It's not going to hurt him. He literally was injured on his first carry of team session and training camp this year. So one carry, unfortunately, is all that it takes. So I understand that has no bearing on future injuries and things like that. But again, my preference is, given the workload, given the value, if you lose, Najee Harris is really the de facto quarterback of this team. If you lose him, your season is just ruined before it gets going. It has a very quarterback feel, his value to this team.
Right. Okay, we're through the injury report there. They have had a couple of, Master Teague was yesterday, got waived injured, and Max Borghi was signed. He might be lucky to see the field, right, Max?
Saturday? Yeah. If he plays, it'll be very late. He could get action in that finale when, most of the guys are, running backs are still going to play in that one. Sure. Jalen Warren, I'm sure we'll see time and things like that. But yeah, he may play a little bit from special teams, but you won't see a lot of Borghi against the Jaguars.
All right. Where to? Deshaun Watson news, finally.
Yeah, have some finality there. Been speculating and talking about appeals and possible scenarios, and now we have our answer. The NFL and NFLPA agreeing to a final punishment for Deshaun Watson, 11 games and a $5 million fine. So he will be able to return, fittingly enough, I suppose, week 13 against the Houston Texans, his former team. So he will not obviously play in the week 3 game against Pittsburgh. He will be eligible to play in the week 18 finale against the Steelers. So initially was 6 games based on the Sue Robinson initial ruling. The NFL predictably appealed that, and as opposed to having their own ruling, which would have maybe created more legal issues and more of a public fight about it, the NFL and NFLPA settling on 11 games and that hefty fine.
This whole thing feels contrived now.
What do you mean by that?
It feels like this was a dog and pony show to get it to where it's at now. It just feels that way. Well, she's probably gonna rule this, and then we'll say this, and then you say this, and then we'll send it over here, make it look like it's going to an arbitrator, and then in the meantime we'll settle in the middle there. Everybody's happy, and we'll move on to this.
I don't know if I see it from that standpoint. I think the NFL certainly wanted a harsher punishment. I think Sue Robinson was encouraging each side to settle before her ruling, so she wouldn't have to make a ruling there and go through this appeals process. But my view on the settlement is the NFL doing this. They wanted the harshest punishment possible. They wanted an indefinite suspension, a full season suspension, but they knew if they did do their own appeal and the individual that Roger Goodell appointed issued his ruling, which is very likely to be a much harsher punishment than what Sue Robinson laid down. The union would try to fight that in federal court. Would they win that battle? Probably not, but they would still fight it. And it would be more of a public story. It would probably bleed over into the regular season. You'd have the union issuing statements and more just headlines about the situation. I think the NFL wanted that finality of, we agree to this. The union cannot be mad about this punishment because they've agreed to it, and this will finally, again, create that finality. So that's why I think the NFL, even though they could have gotten their own way and strong-armed things and probably gotten Watson for the entire season plus, decided to settle.
Well, the whole contrived thing, too, with the way the Browns restructured, his contract to protect some of that money as well, too. I mean, and the fine is probably nowhere near close to where it needs to be. Or is it the NFL chipping in $1 million and the Browns chipping in $1 million too? I mean, it feels like just one giant whitewash. But I think Watson's fine should have been stiffer. More games, but this settlement too magically make sure that he gets an accrued season, right? And also on top of it, magically first game back is against the Texans.
Right. Explain that accrued season part, because if he didn't play 6 games this year, his season would not accrue and his contract would roll over for next year. Explain how that works exactly.
I believe so. There was an article I had pulled. Maybe I'll pull this up.
Okay. My understanding was, had he not played 6 games this year, not been eligible to play in 6 games this year, his contract would roll over, effectively meaning that the Browns would pay him this year's salary next year, which would be just the $1 million.
Right.
And so that's why the NFL didn't want to go 12 plus games, because the Browns would have gotten a good financial benefit by paying Watson just $1 million in base salary in 2023.
Right. I think you got the gist of it right there. I thought let's see, trying to find, I know
that language can be confusing, accrued versus credited versus all that kind of stuff. But that seems to be the reason why the 11, because I know people were saying, we'll do 12 or do 14, and the NFL doing 11, a bit of more random number for that reason, it appears.
Yeah, I had an article pulled. I can't find it now, but I was going to read it off the CBA. But I think you've got the gist of it there.
All right. So yeah, I mean, is it enough? I mean, it's better than 6, obviously, but could it have been more? Again, I think the NFL could have done more. They were in control of this whole thing. I mean, they could have just done their own appeal process and not had settlement talks, but that would have put this thing probably in federal court. That wouldn't have necessarily stayed the punishment. Watson still would have at least missed the first 6 games, but it becomes a story more and more, and the story never leaves, and the union would fight, and they would kick and scream, and they would talk about it, and just not a good situation in the NFL to be in. So now neither side can complain about the punishment anymore because both sides have agreed to it. And that's probably the biggest reason why they settled.
And that's why I said it kind of feels contrived here because, when you look at the making sure he's able to play in at least 6 games, you know what I'm saying? It just, everything just looks like it's mapped out perfectly for the player in this instance.
Yeah, I mean, this in the sense of,
poor Calvin Ridley takes a tip from Uncle Dave and puts a parlay down,
sure.
and he's gone for the season.
Right.
And obviously the NFLPA is going to stand up for any player, especially in a situation, one of the star players in something like this. And looking back at it in the rearview mirror now, it all, this should have been more predictable now that we have the results. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand that. But I just look at where we're at now and just kind of move on from that. I mean, there's certainly a discussion.
I will learn from this moving forward when they get into situations. I think we've got a good template now of how the back and forth will go and what the final settlement will look like. And shame on a bunch of us for not pinpointing that this would have been exactly what the outcome would have been now that we once again look back at it in the rearview mirror.
Sure. And again, I think there's an argument and a discussion to be had that the NFL's punishments feel not weighted correctly in the sense of, Watson gets 11 games for this and Calvin Ridley's, suspended for the season for gambling. I understand that. And that's, a whole different discussion we could have a separate time. I would just say that the NFL's no gambling, zero tolerance policy is a long-standing one that's literally been going on for decades and decades. I think back to Paul Hornick and Alex Karras, those guys suspended for a full season for betting on games way back when. And so that is just a long-standing understanding of how the NFL has always policed that aspect. But certainly we can all agree just logically that what Watson's accused of and what Ridley was accused of and apparently did are not weighted the same, and that Watson's punishment should be more than what Ridley did. But it's just the way this thing's been written and codified and all that kind of legal mumbo jumbo.
Okay.
All right.
I'm sure people are ready to have this behind them now. It's going to be interesting to see what the Browns maybe do or don't do at the quarterback position. It's going to be hard for them to win a lot of games, I think, with Jacoby Brissett, but we'll see.
Yeah, they were a competitive team with half of Baker Mayfield last year, so I think they'll still be in the mix. It's still a good roster overall. I think Brissett will be the guy. Who knows, but I don't think they're going to go after Jimmy Garoppolo or any other quarterbacks. I think they're going to ride with Jacoby Brissett for the first 11 games of the season, but we'll see.
What did you think about real quick Watson's? Man, why did they even put him in front of a camera yesterday? I mean, and also the Browns, everything that's come out of the mouths of the organization yesterday just seemed not right.
Yeah, I think they've all done a bad job handling this. Everything from Watson's last week and his softball interview last week with Aditi. I mean, you talked to a Cleveland Browns employee. She now works for the team, for his interview to show his contrition, which seemed so fake and hollow. The apologies that turned into my innocence. The team just, pretty bland statements that don't really say a lot of anything. I hate apologies that are I'm sorry for any pain that I've caused without any sort of actual accountability and specificity and explaining what I did wrong, or at least how I'm going to rectify things and things like that. So I think they're all just crap, to be honest with you, but that's all standard fare, I guess.
My wife always says it's just better come out and say, I'm sorry, I got caught.
Yeah. I just like people who are, if you say you're sorry, explain what you're sorry for, not I'm sorry for any pain I may have caused.
I triggered everybody.
Yeah. It's just, it's ridiculous and hollow. And Watson's trying to do this lame apology while also saying he's totally innocent. Pick a lane. Either you say you're innocent and don't apologize, or apologize and explain what you're apologizing for. You can't do both.
Mm-hmm. All right. Moving on from Browns Depot.
Yes. Amen to that. Let's talk about Mike Tomlin, his press conference yesterday, revealing the quarterback pecking order, which was if you read the tea leaves during training camp this week of practice, it was pretty obvious the order in which quarterbacks will appear in Saturday's game against Jacksonville. Mitch Trubisky will start, followed by Kenny Pickett, and then Mason Rudolph finishing things off. And so that's how they run all week in camp. It was Trubisky, Pickett, Rudolph. And so Tomlin saying he wants to see Pickett play with more varsity players, and said he'll probably play with some first-string guys as well, at least the starting offensive line at some point. And so a bigger chance here for Kenny Pickett, who to me is really in the driver's seat to be the number 2 quarterback, not just in this game, which he very much will be, but for the regular season as well. He's certainly got a good chance to cement his spot as his team's backup quarterback.
Well, this is going to be the closest that Kenny Pickett gets to real football, I would imagine, this preseason, the way things seem to be trending. I think Mike Tomlin's expecting Jacksonville to kind of treat it as their tune-up game. And, he put it out there. He says, we know more about Mason. And, really the goal is to see what you got, kid. It'll be interesting to see how much work Mitch actually gets. Mitch says he would like to get a little bit more than maybe he got in that first preseason game. And as you had reported out there during training camp, kind of early in the week with Kenny Pickett getting that, early kind of that 2-minute offense, that's when the signs really started pointing towards him being the second quarterback in the game, and probably the one that's going to at least close out the first half. And then we'll see if he opens the second half or not, or if it's Mason or which way they go that way there. So I dedicated a terrible take to this on Thursday. Everybody obviously should be really, really excited. If you thought you were excited about the game against the Seahawks and Kenny Pickett's debut, your excitement right now heading into the Saturday night game should trump that, because you're going to get to see, Kenny Pickett potentially even playing, or should be able to play, with all 3 starting wide receivers, right? I mean, Chase Claypool hasn't made his debut yet. Deontay Johnson hasn't made his debut yet. We've all obviously seen George Pickens, and he would be probably expected to be the third wide receiver in there. The offensive line probably going to play a little bit longer in this one as well too. So this is really and they kind of game planned a little bit more in camp this week as well. This is a what do you have, kid kind of moment. And even though it is on the road and not expected to be very hostile territory, if you will, I was going to say people are going to be surprised how many Steeler fans show up at that game, but no, people aren't going to be surprised. There is going to be a large contingent of Steeler fans in Jacksonville. I can promise you that. And but within all that, it is still a road game. Mm-hmm. It's not the friendly confines of Acrisure Stadium, formerly known as Heinz Field, where Kenny obviously very, very comfortable at. So there is still the road game aspect of it. And once again, the level of excitement should be probably triple what it was last week. And I really look forward to seeing how he performs coming off of a performance against the Seahawks that should have Kenny Pickett as a very confident rookie quarterback right now.
I say this a lot, and I mentioned this yesterday with a different position group, but it's about how do you stack good performances. You had a really good game in your debut. That's so well and good. Can you continue that? Can you be able to stack that good performance and put another one on top of that and avoid some of those peaks and valleys? And of course, there are going to be down moments. He's probably not going to have the sterling game against Jacksonville that he did against Seattle, where he only had 2 incompletions and really played almost a flawless kind of game. There are going to be some bad moments. That's inevitable for any position, especially quarterback, but just overall, can you meet that moment of, okay, you set the bar for yourself pretty high. What can you do what's next? What are the next things you can do? And can you continue that overall consistency and solid foundational quarterback play? And to your point, it's a really good one about doing that on the road. And you're right, it's going to be Jacksonville preseason game. Not going to be a ton of fans there, but still a different environment, a less comfortable environment. And that's important to see and to learn about a guy like Kenny Pickett. So, how much will he play with Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool? I'm not quite sure. I could see those guys exiting basically when Mr. Trubisky exits, but he should play with more of the core starting offensive line and a guy like George Pickens and just some more guys who are going to make this roster. So it'll be a good test number 2 for Kenny Pickett. Can he push the ball downfield a bit more? Can he maybe have just a slightly quicker release times and some of the quick game type stuff? Those are the things overall I'm looking for him against Jacksonville.
Real quick, obviously Steelers Nation is everywhere. If you're a Steelers fan in the South, and let's say you live in, I don't know, anywhere from New Orleans to Miami to Atlanta, pretty good stretch of area. You're going to that game, especially because Jacksonville tickets aren't overly that difficult to get, period. And especially during preseason, I lived in Pensacola, and that's a good, technically on the other end of I-10 from Jacksonville. Jacksonville's right there on the East Coast, whereas Pensacola is as close as you can get to the Alabama state line in the other direction. And
right.
But I guarantee you there are fans in where I'm from that are going to make that journey over there. So there's going to be a lot of Steelers. You're going to hear Kenny chants. I'm willing to bet you there. Now beyond that, what I wanted to ask you about, if you were to divide, let's see, there were 3 different sections of practices during camp between breaks, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, in terms of like how many groupings there were between off days. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Essentially. Yes. 3, I think that sounds right. Okay.
Was this last grouping of practices the best group for Kenny Pickett throughout camp?
Well, the last 2 days were a little tougher to tell, just given kind of the slower walkthrough-ish scout team nature of it. I just view it as continued progression. I think the second grouping and this last grouping have been much more quality than what the first grouping, the first 4 or so days of practice were for him in terms of his accuracy, ball placement, getting the ball out quicker, being more decisive, running the show a bit more, directing traffic and scramble drills and things like that, taking care of the football, making better decisions. So I don't know if I can think back to really pull what was better, group 2 or group 3, but both were good. And I've seen just a steady upward climb in his play, which is, of course, what you want to see.
Right. Though, one of the main things I'm looking for in this game is him being able to push the football down the field a little bit more. Like to see his average intended air yards and his average completed yards take a healthy step up, probably at least 3 yards in each stat at the minimum. I think. I mean, he's going to get a good chunk of playing time, I think, in this game. So, and with some good receivers as well too. So I would look, he doesn't have to take 8 shots down the field past 15 yards, but you just want to see him be able to push the football down the field a lot more than any, because he really didn't do it at all in that first preseason game. So I think that's the biggest thing that I'm looking for in this game is see him air it out a little bit.
If you had to guess when he'll appear in the game and how much he'll play, what do you think those answers are? When do you think we'll see him and how long will he play for?
Yeah, and I really trust Mike Tomlin when he says it depends on what he sees out of Trubisky. I envision Trubisky getting 3 series. So
roughly the first quarter?
Yeah. So I would think second quarter on for Pickett, and then have Pickett go through the process of going into halftime and coming out, and then maybe playing a series or 2 in the second half, depending on how things are going. and then turning it over, to Mason at that point.
I'm basically lockstep with you. I think loosely speaking, and you're right, this thing's not set in stone. It'll be based on the ebbs and flow of play and performance and how many reps you get, not just a quarter and time clock standpoint. But I think Kenny Pickett around second quarter, I would definitely have him come out to start the second half to see how he prepares for that. He's not done that. He just started the second half. Last week, he didn't go from ending one half to continuing the next one. I'd probably play him through the third quarter and just get him a full half of football, second to third quarter, and then let Rudolph play fourth quarter and finish things out. I want to give Pickett all the reps and all the situations that he may find themselves in, just to see how he responds to that. And so I'll play him as much as I can in this game.
Right.
Let's see. Anything else on Mike Tomlin during his press conference? Did announce that Kendrick Green will start at left guard over Kevin Dotson. A mild surprise, given that Green started the opener with Kevin Dotson nursing that ankle injury. Dotson's healthy and worked this whole week in full, and they've continued to rotate first team left guard snaps. I don't know if there will be maybe some sort of rotation in game with the first team guys, or if Green will be truly the first team left guard the entire time, and then Dotson coming in after that. So not really sure what to make of that, but certainly something I'll be keeping an eye on while watching the game.
Yeah, I mean, is this putting a bone that much further out for Kevin Dotson? Is Kevin Dotson just, not played practice well enough? Is he getting punished for missing time with it? I don't know. But, and you would probably agree with me. The hope here is that Kevin Dotson comes out of this, enters week one as a starter. It's going to be very disappointing on several levels if Dotson does not open as a week one starter. Or the only way I'll walk that back is if Kendrick Green comes alive and just has an incredible rest of the preseason at this point.
The point I made on yesterday's special edition of the podcast was that coming into camp, my thought was, if Dotson is not running away with his job, that's a problem to begin with, even if he ultimately wins the job. And so far, Dotson is not running away with that job. And now some of that's injury related, and I get that, but it is a concern and a disappointment that Dotson's not clearly that guy and still struggling to maybe put a stamp on that starting spot and still rotating with Kendrick Green relatively late in this process.
Where are you at on Kendrick Green right now after watching training camp and the first preseason game and all of his rookie season?
More specifically to what I've seen this summer, it has been generally more of the same from last year. I think he's been able to stay on his feet maybe a bit more than what he did as a rookie. I still think some of the issues he's had at center were issues at guard in terms of, and again, to me, it's partly a lack of size, partly a lack of length thing, but it's really technique. And the overall thought in Kendrick Green is because he lacks some of the overall length and size in terms of his height and overall stature, he's got to be perfect with his technique, with his hand placement, his punch, his footwork, and it's still very inconsistent. And just based on what I was watching in the Seattle game, and I want to keep an eye on this going forward, he has more issues with three techs, with guys who align outside shade on him, and maybe they spike inside or they're trying to rush the edge, as opposed to one techs where you can kind of slide down, and seem to be a lot more successful against guys who were, as Pat Meyer would term it, on his body, as opposed to guys who were more outside shade, and again, using Meyer's term, off his body. And so that's just a general observation that I saw, but it's really a dice roll. I mean, there were some quality reps, some good wins in that game by Kendrick Green when everything was coming together with his hand placement, his punch, and all those things. But when it was bad, it was bad. And he certainly was still struggling with power and bull rushes and can't stall those things out with hop steps the way that a Mason Cole or a James Daniels could. So long story short, just because he changed positions and he may be more comfortable at guard, I'm sure that he is, the issues that he has in this game have not gone away.
Yeah, and I'm glad you hit on that because, yes, there were some quality snaps in that game for him, especially run game snaps and him showing that mobility to reach and get turned and then get to the second level on another couple of snaps there. But the bad snaps are awful.
Right, but he had some wins in pass pro too, but they were against one techs where he just is more comfortable with guys when he can kind of slide down and are on his body as opposed to guys who are more off his body. So that was my overall feel.
Did they do? Is it an injustice to Kevin Dotson by insisting on making him a left guard?
I wouldn't say an injustice. I mean, at this point, he's probably pretty comfortable there. I understand, excuse me, that he was a right guard in college, and so that was his more natural spot. But I don't view it as an injustice. I don't see that as being necessarily a root cause of his problems.
All right. Well, we're obviously going to have our eyes on both of those guys. James Daniels, you're concerned about him, and I think you made that obvious in a recent terrible take as well. The whole offensive line, there's some questions that need to be answered.
Sure, Dan Moore, probably not his best outing overall.
He's going to get a nice matchup this week, right?
What does Josh Allen play his side? And I'm not sure what they're doing with Walker. He can kind of play up and down the line, but I'm sure he'll see some quality matchups.
Right. He's going, and I've got to get through some Jacksonville tape later on today before the game and all, but he should see some quality matchups against some young edge guys.
And as Mike Tomlin said, Jacksonville kind of had a schedule because they played in the Hall of Fame game. So this is game 3 for them. And so they're a little more further along as Pittsburgh is. So I kind of like that for the Steelers. Maybe they're in a slight disadvantage standpoint there, playing game 2 on the road against a team that's playing their 3rd game. And I just want to see how Pittsburgh responds to that.
Let's backpedal real quick to the quarterback situation here. Kenny Pickett, when he, let's say you see what you want to see out of Kenny Pickett against the Jaguars. All right. Okay. And you feel like he can open up the season as the backup to Mitch Trubisky. You got to trade Mason at that point.
I'm not in the camp that you have to.
I am.
Why are you in the camp that you have to?
Because Mason's going to want the hell out of there.
Yeah, but he's not going to make us think about it. He's been very professional through this process.
I
mean, what's he going to do? Is he going to mutiny? Is he going to go to the media?
No. But I mean, look, there's just some of the comments that he made yesterday, and they should have been expected. Sure. 100% honest. Here's the whole thing with Mason. From the day he was drafted until now, this guy obviously the majority of the fan base has been against him, and I think all of this stems from some initial comments that weren't set in proper context, and then what Ben Roethlisberger had to say in relation to that. I mean, just days after he was drafted. From there, Mason's been fighting an uphill battle. Look, is Mason ever shown that he can be, a franchise quarterback? No. And now you obviously have gone out and got Mitch Trubisky. You've drafted it. I mean, you want to talk about lame duck status. I mean, he is lame duck status and has been that for quite a bit now at this point. So, and then Mike Tomlin tries to frame this as it's an open quarterback competition. We all knew it wasn't. I mean, has this been fair?
I mean, the way
Mike Tomlin tried to portray this to be, has it been fair?
Probably not as fair as he's trying to make it sound publicly, but the NFL is not all about fairness. It's about what's the best thing for the team. And I think the way they've done the quarterback battle is, because Mike Tomlin basically day 1 of the spring, and Cam Heyward confirmed this, said that told the whole team, Mitch Trubisky is our starter today. And so that expectation was met way back in May. And I think the way they've viewed this is it's Trubisky's job to lose. The other guys can compete. And if Trubisky struggles, we'll look at other options. But it is Trubisky's job to lose. Is the way they built this whole quarterback, quote unquote, battle. Now, has that been perfectly fair to Mason Rudolph? No, it probably hasn't. But fairness or not, that doesn't mean you have to trade him just because the process wasn't fair to him or just because he was poorly treated or viewed or whatever happened, whenever he got drafted. And Ben made his comments about, why did they draft this guy?
I'm looking at it from the aspect of he's a if he's going to be your number 3, he should be a 2 somewhere else, and other teams will probably recognize that, and then at least give you that 5th round draft pick that you probably want for him. And
go ahead.
I just think that's the look. The Steelers should do what benefits the Steelers first and foremost. Who cares how it impacts the player? But and I understand fresh on their mind a couple of years ago, and we traded away Josh Dobbs and all like that. But if you get to a third, I just think the best thing all the way around, I envision it being, and look, I fully expect Mason to get in the third quarter of this game. I mean, as the third quarterback in this game, and have some success, like out there playing with the smaller kids.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? The all-time quarterback in street football, with the young kids there. That's the best way that he can force his way, not force, but increase his odds of getting out of town, is to look like the best quarterback on the field Saturday night, and as a byproduct of what he's going against. Assuming
that Trent Scott and company don't kill him in the process.
True.
But I agree. I mean, he should look good overall. He's a more varsity player against more quote unquote JV type competition. So I get that. Listen, obviously, if Rudolph somehow remains the number 2, he will not be traded. If he's the number 3, that conversation to be traded certainly opens. I agree with that. That's the starting basis of a Mason Rudolph conversation. Is he is no longer the backup. He is now the 3rd string guy. Kenny Pickett has beaten him out. I am not necessarily opposed to trading Mason Rudolph, but I don't think you have to. It depends on who calls, what they're offering. And again, as you just touched on, the point that I always go back to is the scars of 2019, where you trade Josh Dobbs to Jacksonville for a 5th, got good value from him, and then 10 days later, you lose Ben for the year, and you sit there and say, man, I would have loved to have a Josh Dobbs. And you go to Rudolph and Duck and that whole mess that it ultimately became. And so I think Pittsburgh is well aware of what happened just a couple of years ago, and they're probably a little more hesitant to make that deal unless a team really offers something they cannot refuse.
With CBA inflation and salaries and all like that, everything relatively speaking to past years, a $3 million number 3 quarterback is not normal, relatively speaking. You know what I'm saying?
Right. But it's not killing them. They can afford it.
They can afford it, but it's just, it would be really foreign territory. And of course, we're in foreign territory with Omar Khan,
and Ben being gone. This is all new. This is a whole new situation.
Right. I'm not saying it can't work, obviously. And look, I mean, you would have the single best number 3 quarterback in the NFL. Should you have to get to that point. My gut feeling all along from the moment that Oladokin was selected has been Mason's going to get dealt at some point here. Okay. Now, obviously, at some point, I'm allowed to move the goalpost here. Realistically, what I meant by that was by the start of the season, but by November 1st, the trade deadline. But at that point, it's kind of a moot. A mute. How did Bill Cowher used to say? A mute.
That what he would say?
Yeah. Anyway, I still have this feeling now that camp's over with, and look, obviously an injury Saturday night could change this, but my gut feeling all along from the moment Oladokin was taken was that time is short for Mason Rudolph. They're going to deal him at some point. And I don't think, has Mason's trade value ever been higher than it is right this moment?
I guess not, but that's kind of like me saying, have I ever been taller than I am right now? No, but I'm still not that tall.
You when you get older, at least most I did, you get the old man hump, and you go the other way a little bit there. So
right. Well, I'm saying, even my peak is still, I'll decrease later, and Rudolph's value would decrease later, but his peak is still not that high.
Okay.
Hey, listen, could they trade him? Sure. And I think the odds have increased believing that he's now going to be the number 3. Because again, if he was the number 2, the backup, no chance he gets sold. He was going to stay as a Pittsburgh Steeler this season and then go somewhere else next year when he becomes a free agent. So I think the odds have increased, but I'm not nearly as convinced, and I don't categorize it as a have to. I think Pittsburgh is more than comfortable keeping their quarterback room as strong as possible, giving themselves options, and holding on to Mason Rudolph.
Has Mason handled himself well throughout all this? Is question 1. Question 2 is, do you feel sorry for Mason any?
Question 1, yes, he's done a really good job to be professional. My terrible take today is on just how professional, and my phrase was all competition, no ego in that quarterback room. Trubisky, Rudolph, and Pickett, and Oladokun, for that matter, have all really handled a new, unique, and at times probably difficult situation well. They've all done and said the right things, and they seem to be a really good group of guys overall. Do I feel sorry for Mason Rudolph? I mean, sorry is probably not the right word. I can probably sympathize with maybe some frustration. I think he's been dealt a really bad hand this offseason. Ben finally retires. Mason's trying to step out of that shadow of the guy that probably didn't like him that much for 4 years. And you think this is Mason's time to shine. And then they, sign Trubisky 10 minutes into free agency, and they draft Kenny Pickett and even a 7th round quarterback on top of that. And Rudolph probably never really got the fairest of shakes this offseason. So that's frustrating. Do I feel bad for the guy? Probably not, because that's just business, and Rudolph was not going to be the long-term guy, and Pittsburgh recognized that, and smartly so, and looked for other options.
How could have this gone different right from the moment that Mason Rudolph was drafted? It feels like the whole context of everything right out of shoot is what doomed him with the fan base. Look, the fans hate him. I mean,
they don't like him.
The old 80-20 rule here. 80% of the fan base just despises Mason.
I don't think it was the initial comments that did that. I think it was him having to play in 2019 and predictably struggling, and just all the controversy from the Earl Thomas hit to obviously the Myles Garrett incident, things that really weren't his fault necessarily, but just weren't. They were just kind of, meme situations, I guess. And that's not a great way to be viewed at as kind of the meme, butt of the joke quarterback. And then obviously him struggling as much as he did in 19. Had Ben not gotten hurt, and maybe we got to see Mason later on and he got to play in preseason and be the preseason darling, that might have changed perception. So in terms of how things could have gone differently, Ben probably getting hurt in 19 is what set that path of all the negativity that's around Mason Rudolph.
I think this kid was behind the 8 ball in this 2 hours after he was drafted, within, whenever that first interview happened, and then Ben responded to it.
I know hindsight's 20/20, but would you say it was a mistake to draft Mason Rudolph? Is it a bad decision?
I think it was a mistake to try to frame him the way the organization tried to frame him, I think.
Meaning as a franchise potential heir to Ben.
Right. We had a 1st round grade on him. I don't fault them, because look, what round did they draft Landry Jones in? Was that at 4th or 5th? I've been so long
one of the
ago.
2, 4th or 5th.
And even back then, we knew, Ben wasn't going anywhere at that point. And when was Landry taken?
It was a 4th round pick.
Right. 4th round. And people at the time, why you waste, and Ben in so many words, why are you wasting, it got twisted on him before he even took a snap. I think. And
yeah, I mean, that came in the offseason of the Ben retirement talk, and that might have been one reason why this team drafted Rudolph.
Well, that's a hell of a way to frame it. I mean, once again, I think Mason was doomed almost nearly right from the start.
So you don't see, there's no way to revise history with him in Pittsburgh that creates a different outcome for him, even in terms of the perception and likability factor of it.
From the moment Ben opened his mouth in kind of, and what do you expect Mason to say right after he was drafted? Mm-hmm. I think Ben's response to what Mason said kind of put this guy behind the eight ball with the fan base side of it,
Sure. Do you feel bad for Mason Rudolph? You asked me.
I do.
Okay.
I really do. And I would like to see Mason for his own, posterity, get free of this organization and at least get a chance somewhere else.
I mean, but do you see him as anything more than a number 2 backup quarterback, even in a different organization in terms of a ceiling?
I see him starting more games in the NFL. How about that?
Okay, that's fair.
And then we'll. Do I think he's going to become Jimmy Garoppolo? No.
Right. I think his ceiling is basically what he is now as a solid or a competent number 2 quarterback.
I mean, you see some of these number 2s around the league, though, and you think, oh man, he can be better than that.
Right? Yeah. I mean, he's a quality backup quarterback, and that's all I think he'll ever be. But
I think he can
make
get
a living in the
some
NFL.
Game. I think he can get into some games and win you some games.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I'm rooting for him to get traded, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that he probably would like that. He sees the writing on the wall. He understands he's not going to start and probably won't be the number 2. He'll be in street clothes if he does not get dealt come week 1 against the Bengals. So I'm sure he would love to go somewhere else to play and compete and get a chance. Will that happen? Pittsburgh will decide that. And again, my thought is they will answer the phone for Mason Rudolph. They will not actively shop him. And then it just comes down to how good of an offer do they get. I think you'd want at least a 5th round pick. And I think that's even pushing it in terms of what you'll get for the guy. I think that's probably about the best that you could get for.
Well, right after Oladokin was drafted, I put on Twitter, trade Mason for a 5th round pick, and I got a lot of pushback saying they'll never be able to get that.
Yeah, I think I mean, maybe it depends on just what teams lose quarterbacks and where he could go. I don't even know. I've mentioned the Rams, and I think that was good doc connecting, but they seem to like their backup there in John Walford. So I don't know if that's actually going to be a landing spot, but I think that the dots still connect there.
I mean, there's a couple spots around the league where teams could use. Now, look, you got to remember when dealing him, he's got 1 year left on his contract, so
right.
that diminishes of his value in and of itself. You're talking about a 1 year guy, so you got to be careful what you give up for a 1 year rental there. Now, obviously, if you lose a starter, it doesn't matter, right? Because you need a guy now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I've kind of thought all along that we might be talking a 5th round pick here.
Right, but that contract might make it tougher. I know Dobbs got a 5th, but that kind of felt like an overpay, and he had, there was more team control there. That's why I mentioned the Rams, because they don't give a crap about draft picks. They'll gladly trade a 5th or a 6th round pick to get a guy that can potentially help them win now or be part of that process.
Will Mason Rudolph get dealt before week 1?
I think the odds have gone up. I'm still going to say no.
I'm going to say yes.
You feel pretty confident? You seem pretty confident.
Yeah, my gut all along has told me this is going to happen, but
right.
we'll see. Look, people say sometimes that we agree way too much on this show. That's not the case, but we definitely have a difference of thought on this. One of us will be right and one of us will be wrong.
And the other, we'll let the other know about it on a future podcast.
Well, you're not allowed to know.
I'm not allowed to. Okay.
No, you are. I'm pretty sure you'll give me hell about it. But
yeah.
It's just I've thought this from the moment that Oladokin was drafted. If Oladokin's not drafted, maybe
you really think Oladokin? I don't think they didn't draft Oladokin in terms of trading Mason Rudolph. They did that for the 4th. No, okay. Now I really disagree with it there.
Okay,
Oladokin had nothing to do with Mason Rudolph. He will continue to have nothing to do with Mason Rudolph being a Steeler or not.
All right.
No way, because they drafted him because they wanted the 4th quarterback. And anyway, but could he get traded? He should. I should say he should. He could get traded. Will it happen?
Would you? Okay, let's go this way. Mason Rudolph Depot.
Maybe not a very successful website.
Hey, this might be the last time we get to talk a lot about him anyway.
That's true.
But would you trade Mason Rudolph for a fifth at this point right now, without seeing the Saturday night game? Would you?
You have to ask the hard questions.
Don't qualify this.
I know, that's what I'm trying to think about it, because I'm
trying to qualify.
I'm trying to wiggle my way out. Well, if the moon is in waning crescent, that whole thing. Would I do that?
Typical Kozora here.
Very politician-esque here. Would I? Short answer, yes.
I would too.
I will take on the risk of not living my fears of 2019 happening all over again, knowing that he's gone after this year, knowing he's the number 3, knowing a small part of it, but knowing that's doing right by the player, because you've probably done a lot wrong to the player overall over the last 4 years. So I would do that, yes.
Okay, I would too. All right. Mason Rudolph Depot is closed.
And hallelujah to that. All right, Dave.
I'm sure coming out of training camp, I'm sure people are thrilled. But I thought this was based on Mason meeting the media yesterday and the way things are trending with Kenny and all. I thought it was a good point to kind of address this.
Right, and it is also worth saying we would have had a good summer. He's had a good camp. He played well, I thought, overall against Seattle. He's had a nice summer. Again, for the first 2 weeks, he was definitely the best quarterback there. Did he finish that way? Maybe not, but I mean, he's had a good camp, and I want to say that out loud.
All right, what else do we have now?
I guess just some overall maybe things to watch for in tomorrow's game against the Jaguars. Again, starters playing a fair amount in this one. Trubisky, Pickett, and then Rudolph being in the quarterback order. Defensively, anything you have your eye on defensively? Hopefully just better run defense and just a better front 7 play overall.
Yeah, I want to see Devin. I want Devin Bush to force me to put my foot in my mouth on Monday morning. I want that good a game out of him.
What do you think that looks like? What are some things he can do? Is it making the big play?
How about at least one tackle for loss?
Or one tackle. We're still looking for tackle,
or one tackle. Pass. I just want to come out of this game saying, well, look, Devin Bush. The heat was on him this past week, and he answered. That's a number one. I'm not worried about Miles Jack. I thought Miles Jack had a really good game the other night. I think the focus is, and as much as I think Robert Spillane was born to be a Pittsburgh Steeler through and through, it's just we know what his upside is, and the fact that we're talking about him and he's still at this point of Devin Bush's career as a guy that's pushing him, we shouldn't be. So that's got me concerned.
Yeah, certainly there's concern there. I guess I want to just see Devin Bush doing the routine things routinely, making tackles when you're on block, not, allowing big cutbacks to your side and, getting off blocks and things like that. I think, again, his camp has been fine. I think he actually had a couple of decent practices to end the summer, to end training camp. But he's got to do some of those more baseline things first before we begin to graduate to making some big, impactful splash plays.
Let's see. What else am I looking for? The whole guard we talked about earlier in the show, Kendrick Green, Kevin Dotson, the offensive line in general is something that's going to have my attention this week. The run defense does have to be better. Doesn't sound like you're going to have Cameron Heyward as part of it. What's going on with Larry, man? Tell me what's happening with Larry. Is this just Larry didn't have a setback, right? Or at least we don't think. Why is Larry not practicing the last 2 days?
I do not know. The first day on Wednesday, I thought, well, just a day off. He had gotten one earlier in camp, and he did not practice again yesterday. And it was not exactly like an intense practice or anything. So I do not know. Hopefully it's nothing. He walked around fine. He moved around fine, but I don't know what the reason was.
All right. How much is Tyson going to play? How's Tyson going to look? We're obviously not going to have Montravius Adams. They're not expecting him to play. Are we going to learn that much more about about the front because of this?
Maybe just individually, some, maybe not as much collectively, but seeing how Tyson looks back out there and hopefully Ladimo can play and what he could look like in game number 2 for him. So maybe we won't learn an incredible amount of more in terms of new information, but just seeing how guys respond second time out after probably an underwhelming performance overall. I think that's always important to watch and learn from.
I mean, look, no Highsmith, however much Watt plays, if he plays, isn't going to be too terribly much.
I want to watch Nard Avery in this game for sure.
Yeah, there you go. That's absolutely one that I want to see in this game for sure. After him missing that and me having questions about pass rush ability, I want to see them get in situations where they can pin their ears back too, right?
True. Yeah, it's hard to do that when Seattle was averaging 6 yards a pop last week.
Right. So how about let's get into some second and long situations and get Avery and Derek Tuska in situations where they can pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. For sure. I want to see that. Benny Snell football versus Jaylen Warren football.
Yeah, I want to see who comes in first. Warren seemed to be running ahead of, at times, both Snell and McFarland this week. I don't know if that's just a greater opportunity and a longer look or whatever the case was, but certainly you want to see how Warren looks overall. Ball security, number one thing, but continue his hard running ways. And he's trying to do everything he can to, stamp his spot on this roster.
Right. And hold on to the football. I think you got a good lesson this week of having to carry that thing around. So I'm looking for, excuse me, more of Jaylen Warren, more of the Jaylen Warren that we saw last Saturday night. But hold on to the football this time.
Did you buy Tomlin's comments of all the running backs do that to carry the football? Because I didn't buy that.
No. All the running backs do that he has hope for that fumble in the first preseason game.
Right. That's a better way to.
He forgot to add that part of it onto there.
He also continued. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just saying, yes, he meant that if he adds on, he tells you truths, but he doesn't tell you the entire truth.
All those half truths, I think.
I think it means, I think it's a good sign overall that Jaylen Warren had to do that, because I think Mike Tomlin sees it in him, and I think he just wants to kind of nip this in the bud. I think it's a coaching point that, look, you got potential here, but you got to hold on to that football, and because of that, I'm gonna make sure I draw a lot of attention to it this week. The media is going to make sure to see it and write about it, and all you're going to read and hear on the terrible podcast is Can Jaylen Warren hold on to the football because of the way he was treated this past week? Mission accomplished.
That was an exact quote. You're going to hear about it on the terrible podcast, Jaylen. So hold on to that.
I thought I heard that, but maybe I misheard. I don't know.
It's in the transcript somewhere. No, I think you're right. I think this was, the old adage is, if a coach stops coaching you, that means they don't believe in you anymore. Right. And the fact that you're coaching them and you're trying to make sure that he's understanding the weight of that responsibility is a message. We really like you, but we want to, for this to work, you have to make sure that we're taking care of the football, because ball security, and Tomlin's word is quote non-negotiable. Also, like the Tomlin
nothing would please Uncle Dave more than an undrafted running back, a 5'8" one at that, in our fungible world, making the Steelers 53-man roster.
Yeah, you haven't said fungible much this offseason. I was waiting for that, you to talk about the fungibility of
football's back, baby.
Yeah, it's really back now. I also love that Mike Tomlin continues to say the 3 quarterbacks will play, continue to ignore the existence of Chris Oladokun, although he's getting reps now, but he still makes me laugh when Tomlin says the 3 quarterbacks will play.
Right.
All right, Dave.
Where do we go now here? Last thing.
Presley Harvin. Yeah. Special teams. I assume he's going to punt in this game. I doubt McSkee's going to do it. So I want to see how Harvin looks. He's had a really strong summer, so I'm excited to see him inside a stadium.
That air might be a little bit thick in Jacksonville too. So if he gets a couple of good ones, those late summer nights in Florida, that air gets can get pretty thick at times. So if he can look, consistency, that's what we want to see. No JV punch. I don't have to see a punt out of here, but I want to see some distance, and I want to see some consistency out of PH3.
He's had some punt god-esque type punts this summer, though. I mean, that's a different situation. Obviously, there's no real rush, but I think the combination of him losing weight, obviously being in a better place mentally, not being a rookie, but more importantly, the passing of his father last year. I think his grandmother passed away as well, and so that weighs on you heavily, I'm sure. And maybe even just the fact that they cut Nizelik, and you have that kind of confidence of, okay, you're our guy. You're the only punter we have here. Maybe that's good for a guy like Harvin, because the day after they did that, he punted, he was booming the heck out of the ball. I mean, he was so much better in that session than he was earlier in camp. And so maybe that mentally was just a good thing for him as well.
I'm ready to see the slot fade out of Chase Claypool in this game. The charade needs to be over with the return guys. Get Gunner back there. I want to see Gunner do a couple of things back there in the return game. Who's the up back when Marcus Allen not in this game? Who are the wings? This is going to be an important game to chart and look at the snap counts and all like that as well. I want to see some more Connor Heyward catching the football. What else?
Yeah, I think that hits it pretty well. I think the up back should still be Trey Norwood, with Benny Snell and Jalen Warren being the starting wings, and then one potential second team up back with Mateo Durant, Donovan Steiner being second team wings there. I want to see Mark Robinson do more on special teams as a blocker, as a coverage guy. Connor Heyward to continue his success on kick coverage, maybe get put on different units there. Those are things to watch for.
All right, let's see here, Alex. Before we get to some reader emails here, I wanted to give you the line for where are the preseason lines here on mybookie.ag. We're pleased to have mybookie.ag back as a sponsor of the Terrible Podcast this year, and I'm going to set you up here. If you knew any degenerates, Alex, that would bet on a preseason game and a Steelers preseason game at that, you don't know any of those, do you?
Maybe one or two. Unnamed.
Jaguars -3 against the Steelers. Which side are you going there?
It's preseason. I'll be optimistic and take Pittsburgh, but who the heck knows? I don't know how you determine these things.
I'll take Jaguars lay the 3 in this one. Over under 42 points in this one on mybookie.ag.
You said how many? 42?
42 over under.
It was a big shootout last week. I'll say it's a more low scoring affair. I'll go under this time.
I will go under 42 as well there. So that's some preseason picks using the lines of mybookie.ag. You know the saying, there are a few things in life guaranteed, but if you're looking for a surefire bet this weekend, put your money on the Nigerian Nightmare at MyBookie. Kamara Usman is 20-1, is the heavy betting favorite going into UFC 278, and unlike 277, I don't think we'll see a title change hands in this main event. Man, I throw my money at you. You're not big. I know you're not as big on UFC, Alex, but they get my money every one of these. The long-awaited rematch with Leon Edwards looks to put an exclamation on the night, but regardless of who wins the fight, you too can walk away a winner with MyBookie. Make a deposit and you'll double your money at MyBookie. All you got to do is use promo code TERRIBLE. That's terrible to claim your deposit bonus, dollar for dollar, all the way up to $1,000. MyBookie is the only sports book that gives you the skin and the picks to win, with dozens of predictions from real UFC fighters to make the most informed bet possible. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. And once again, pleased to have them back as a sponsor of the Terrible Podcast. And they've got the preseason lines up there as well, too, for you to win a couple of shekels on as well. So thank you to MyBookie, mybookie.ag.
All right, Dave, let's get to read the emails and close out today's show.
All right, we got through all the topics today, did we not?
Yes, we did.
All right. Let me pull up some emails here real quick. Bryce writes in, second preseason games. Can't wait for the second preseason game. Some thoughts and questions. He says, when it comes to Connor Heyward, he says, I really don't care that he's not good right now at inline blocking as a tight end. All tight ends don't need to be extra tackles as long as he runs his feet and gives effort as a blocker. That's fine with me. Move this guy around, put him in motion, and get him into mismatches in the passing game. I do, however, want to see if he can be good on special teams. If he is, then he's the third tight end, full stop. Yeah, look, I mean, I think I know I have thought from the moment that he was drafted that I really liked his chances to be third tight end, second fullback, whatever you want to call him in this situation. I think in the preseason opener, he did pretty much everything that you need him to do to have a roster spot. Right, Alex?
Yeah, I think he's in a good place right now. He's just a different type of tight end. Pittsburgh has to recognize that. They can't use him the way they use, Zach Gentry or Pat Frymuth. And you've seen signs of that. And I understand, giving effort, running your feet, that's important. But, he's never going to be a very good blocker. And it's always going to be a challenge for him as an inline guy. He's just going to have the same size, length, strength limitations that you have today. 3 years from now, he's not going to get, any bigger or any longer. But he's got a different way to win, different value, more versatility, a good athlete, just a natural football player. And so you have to just maximize
really
those
good
strengths.
Catching the football. He is really good.
Yeah. So just be smart with him, understand where he's going to win, where he's going to lose. And that's what coaching is, putting guys in position to succeed. So I think they're on a path to do that. And he had a nice summer.
He says, I know Mike Tomlin loves position flexibility, but I wonder if Kevin Dotson is more of a case of Tomlin misreading the situation. Maybe Dotson is not position flexible, and maybe he should have been anchored at right guard, which seems to be his more natural position in college. That would have meant that in 2021, the team should have went out and signed a left guard free agent and let Dotson grow as the right guard. I wonder if putting him on the left side has stunted his development a little bit. Look, I mean, Kevin Dotson's got a big question mark. My thoughts through here's the thing. Before his ankle injury last season, I thought he was playing well. I mean, he wasn't going to go to the Pro Bowl well, but I thought he had I thought the arrow was pointing up prior to him suffering that ankle injury. Now, the rest of the line as a whole last year was just shambles. And, but I thought he was making progress at left guard. Then the ankle injury hit, then he missed the rest of the season. And here we are, almost like that never happened.
Yeah, it's been hard to pinpoint why Dotson isn't taking more control of this situation. And maybe that's just Pittsburgh wanting to make sure each guy stays competitive and hungry and no one gets complacent. And I know Dotson had the injury and that may have thrown a bit of a monkey wrench into their plans, but maybe it's just something that we don't know about with Kevin Dotson that they just don't like, or they want to make sure he's still being pushed and not getting complacent. So it's been hard to read.
We will be watching this game for sure, Bryce. You can bet every snap, obviously offensive line in general, but we will be focused in on that left guard spot. Dave and Alex from Xavier Robinson writes, and I have two questions for you both. First, Merrill Hodge got a ton of pushback this offseason for what he said about Devin Bush, and even I didn't want to believe what he was saying. I believed it. Boy, that train that train that I had early last season's gotten mighty full, Alex. He says, I didn't want to believe what he was saying. So far this offseason, he's looking like he was a spot on based on what Alex has reported from camp and the play in the first preseason games. Spillane seems like the better fit next to Jack, being that he had a distinct role of being a run stopper. How long into the season do you think it'll be before Spillane is getting more snaps than Bush? Number two, second, like Dave, ever since the signing of Trubisky and drafting of Pickett, I've had a gut feeling that Mason would be traded. He says, I just don't see the Steelers demoting Mason to third string and think they want their first round draft pick to at least be the second team quarterback. given that he's earned that spot. He says, my question is not if you think they will trade him, but do you guys think Mason's fate has already been, funny how we get some of these and we ended up covering them. I think Mason's fate has already been decided. Or do you think this next preseason game could still decide what the team will do at the quarterback position? I think they're really watching closely what Kenny Pickett does in this game. For obviously multiple reasons here. If they come out feeling okay about Kenny, I think that's the goal here overall. As far we're not going to spend a lot of time on Mason Rudolph because we spent 20 minutes on him earlier in the show there. But long story short, I think they're really interested to see what Kenny Pickett does in this game for obvious reasons. What about the first question about Devin Bush and how long into the season do you think it'll be before Spillane is getting more snaps than Bush?
We'll see. It's hard to say for sure. It would not surprise me, though, if that happens sooner than later in terms of Spillane, seeing an increased role and rotating snaps and who knows, maybe even taking over as his team's full-time starter. It's just, a wait and see thing there. And then just, quickly with the Pickett Rudolph thing, the way I'll frame it is it's Pickett's job to lose as the number 2. That's where he's at right now.
All right, Nick Shuley writes in, David Knox, at this point, I'm starting to think that Devin Bush is more passionate about something in his life that's not football, which is fine, he says. If Miles Jack balls out this season, fingers crossed he does, could you guys see the Steelers giving him a contract extension this coming offseason? If so, what do you think it would look like money-wise? As excited as I am to watch Miles Jack play in 2022, I think it's way too early to be talking about. I think he really would have to have kind of a Pro Bowl esque, all pro-esque type season, though, for us to be talking about the Steelers giving him a contract extension after 1 year and just signing him to a 2-year deal. That's the whole reason they signed him to this deal is so they hopefully don't have to spend a lot of money on him the second season. However, if we see, man, Miles Jack was by far the best player on the field for the Steelers, not named TJ Watt in 2022. Maybe you get into that conversation, but from where we sit right now here on August 19th, I think it's way too early to be talking about a contract extension for Miles Jack after his first season in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think that's all way down the road, and I don't think the odds of that are happening or even that high. Even if Jack has a good season, I think that's probably not. I don't think an extension would happen next summer.
Right,
but that's all. Let's hope we get to that conversation this time next year.
Jeff Berg about the 4th down Pickett sack. Not a complaint on Pickett, but what did y'all see on the All-22? I mean, we talked a little bit about the Pickett sack already, didn't we?
Briefly, I mentioned it. I mean, it was pressure, rolling to his right, 4th down. You're trying to make a play. There really wasn't anything open there. And so, not his best play, but I understand he doesn't want to throw the ball away because it's 4th down. And so you kind of have this never say die mentality, but you take the sack and you lose yards in the process. So maybe a teachable moment, but, given the circumstances, it's hard to be too upset at Pickett because you're not trying to throw the ball away on 4th down.
Right. He says, was anyone open? I think somebody was, but I mean, I it's easy to look in a still frame and say somebody was open, but trying to avoid the rush and everything like that, would it have forced him to throw up kind of a, maybe a more ill-advised pass? I don't know. You know what? I consider it a teaching moment.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
I mean, I understand why we want to start going back now all these days later and kind of nitpicking certain days. My overall view on Pickett's play, once again, was I thought for the most part he was put in position with high potential success rates, and he delivered on those. And no, he didn't have he didn't push the football down the field and all like that. But I saw what I wanted to see out of that first, him succeeding in areas he was put in to succeed in. And there were a couple of throws over to the sideline, I thought were very, very quality throws. I thought when the push was on late in the game and he drove him down the field and got him the game winner there, I think that was good. I just think all in all, it was a confidence building performance, and it was an A+ pass the test type situation. So I don't think we should go back and spend a lot of time looking at 1 4th down sack in what was a good game for him. You agree?
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Let's see. Todd writes in, as I sit and listen week in and week out about the problems we once again are facing with the offensive line, I still struggle with the fact that we had a center that we had a centerpiece, Creed Humphrey, available in the second round last year. Someone who would have shored up the middle for a decade. He says, I like Pat Freiermuth, but we really got a commodity with Pat and didn't address a need. Here we are shuffling and patching people together. He says, Dave even said, don't be surprised if we add someone not on the roster. He says, ugh, how big of a mistake, hindsight always 2020. And I get that. Did the Steelers make here? He says, as far as Mason trade rumors, after absolutely embarrassing and horrible way Steeler fans treated him Saturday night, I'd want out too if I were Rudolph. He says he's never going to get accolades when it comes to the fan group. If the Steelers can get anything for him, it would be nice, only if Oladokin can fill in as a capable number 3. So we have a Mason sympathizer here with Todd, and I don't think Todd said anything wrong there. About the first, when I said don't be surprised if we add someone not on the roster, Todd, I'm going to deflect some credit here. All right. Everybody recording this? There's that Alex laugh.
Yeah.
When I meant adding somebody, to the roster late in the process, I wasn't talking about claiming the center off of waivers or some of these running backs or lower level guys here. I was talking more along the lines of someone genuinely that's going to come in and get a roster spot here. All right. So I don't get credit for the offensive line. What's the kid's name they just claimed?
Ryan McCollum.
Yeah, Ryan McCollum. I don't get credit for any of those additions here, or the Max Borges or any Christian Blake's in any of those. All right. So I still do think that someone's coming down the line at one of these positions, though, that's going to make the 53-man roster. You?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe. I haven't really thought about it a whole lot. It just depends on who's available and health of the group, et cetera, et cetera. To the central point about Humphrey versus Freiermuth, looking back, listen, I was the biggest Creed Humphrey fan. I would have taken him in the first round. Would I rather have Creed Humphrey over Pat Freiermuth? I would, but I'm not going to sit there and cry over spilled milk for the next 10 years about it. I think if the worst thing you did in that draft was take Pat Freiermuth, a stud tight end, and this team needed a tight end anyway, I wouldn't call that a want. I would call that a need, especially with where this team's at this year. But that's a pretty good draft overall. So if you miss on Humphrey and you still draft a really good player, which they have in Freiermuth, that's a pretty good job overall.
Would you have taken Creed Humphrey or Najee Harris right now?
Well, I would have taken
in the first round.
I would have taken Humphrey in the second round over Freiermuth. Because I could have taken him in the second round.
No, but at this point now, with
Harris,
mm-hmm.
I don't know.
You want to. You don't want to ostracize yourself.
No, I really like Najee. He's been a fantastic player, and trying to find a back like him would be so tough to do. I don't know. It could go either way. Humphrey will probably be in the NFL longer than Najee Harris will, but Harris is just he's so likable, and he's just a really good player overall.
He's great. He's great. He's going to be a great Steeler, off the field for sure.
I might, and this might sound maybe a little biased here, so I don't get tomatoes thrown at me. I think I might take Harris over Humphrey just because there are so few guys that fit all the ideals that Mike Tomlin wants in a running back that he needs in a bell cow kind of guy, and Harris checks literally all of those boxes and then some. So I still might take Harris just because of the scarcity of what this team needs in a running back and what Harris provided to accomplish that.
Paul Brown says it was great to read about the first reps from Oladokin on Wednesday. Well, it seemed to be a rather so-so showing. The fact he picked up on the playbook and has been a positive influence in the locker room has been a great sign. He says, I'm rooting for the kid to make it in this league. With that being said, he read Carney's article about Oladokin possibly seeing a lot of playing time in the preseason finale. And his question is why. He says, unless Rudolph is traded, it seems the Steelers' 3 quarterbacks are set in stone. In my opinion, it would take a perfect game for Oladokin to take over the 3rd quarterback spot, which is unlikely given the lack of training camp reps he's seen. Alternatively, I'd like to see Pickett start and Rudolph come off the bench to settle the quarterback number 2 battle. I just don't see why playing a quarterback 4 who will more than likely not make the team, barring a Rudolph trade, would be worth the reps in a game. Please help me make sense of this. All right, here's my thoughts here on this. If things go like the Steelers hope they go in this next preseason game against Jacksonville, what should the 3rd preseason game look like if Rudolph's not sent out the door before it?
I agree that Pickett should start and then Rudolph come in relief and basically loosely more of a Pickett first half, Rudolph second half kind of deal. And then with Oladokin, did he get enough reps during the week running what we need him to run? Because if you're running scout team, you might be running the other team's plays as opposed to what, your more base install stuff is. So that's kind of the starting point. And Oladokin still got maybe 20 reps during this week of practice, which is not a lot to really be in a game. But if he were to play, that'd be a situation you're talking the last 2-3 possessions of the 4th quarter. And at that point, you've learned a lot about Kenny Pickett. Rudolph's gotten a fair amount of playing time, and you already have a good understanding of his game anyway. So it would not be a crime to play Oladokin, the final 2 drives of the final preseason game against Detroit.
Once again, this is kind of qualifying it, but we're going to assume they see what they want to see in this second preseason game for the better. What in the hell do you have to gain by playing Mason Rudolph in the last preseason game?
Well, you got to play somebody. I mean, you got to play Pickett the whole game?
No, you play Oladokin.
But does he have enough reps to run a whole half of offense? I mean, you got to put guys in positions
by
to
next
succeed.
week,
I don't know. I mean,
at least you play him at least a quarter and a half. I think what I would do. I just don't see.
That still means you're playing Rudolph some, then, right?
Well, then play Pickett through the first half. Give him.
I agree. Experience, but you said play Oladokin a quarter, and you're giving Pickett the first half. You got a quarter to still to go.
I would then decide if you want to give Oladokin the entire second half or let Pickett play the first 3 quarters.
All right, I think it's fine to play Rudolph in the second half. And
here's the thing. I would still probably let Mitch take a couple possessions, at least one possession in the finale, if there's anything they want to.
But are you going to play any starters in that game? You going to play your starting offensive line, your starting receivers in that game?
That offensive line needs as many snaps.
I mean, that offensive line might, yeah. But the receivers probably don't. So I don't think Trubisky's got to play. If he plays more in this game, I think that's fine. I mean, with Rudolph, the more that you can show for other teams, though, the better. And you got to play somebody. And Oladokin's probably not ready to take a whole half of action. So,
but my point being, if things go well in this second preseason game and Rudolph, plays like the big kid in the all-time quarterback in the street football game, then all you can do is diminish his value in a preseason finale.
Why can't he play well in the finale?
Why take the chance of if his max value is coming out of this second preseason game, then why mess with it?
I mean, by that theory, Rudolph played pretty well in the opener against Seattle, right?
Sure.
So why take the chance of him diminishing his value in this game?
Here.
I mean, but you got to play him. You got to play somebody.
Like we talked earlier in the show, Mason's trade value's never been higher than it is right now, if you ask me.
Okay, so you think he should not play in this game then?
Yeah. Look, I said right from the start in this thing, how many snaps do you need to see out of Mason Rudolph during the preseason?
Right. I mean, obviously the understanding is, and Tomlin said as much, as you know more about Rudolph than the other quarterbacks. And so he needs less time because you need to learn more about the other guys.
Right.
I'm just okay with playing him because, we're a professional football team. We got to play some of these guys. And I think Rudolph will do well in circumstances. And
I think Oladokin should play at least a quarter in the preseason finale. And I don't think Mason should play much, if any, in the finale, assuming he's still around.
Okay, that's fair.
Let's see here. Thomas Lloyd writes in, when was this? 2 days ago. Longtime fan, ad-free subscriber, and daily reader of the website. The entire team seems to put out better content every single year. Boy, we are so blessed. Thomas, you just don't know. And I think does Tyler Wise have something coming out today, Alex? Is it up yet?
I don't think it's posted yet.
You got something on Norwood, a great video on Norwood. Man, we're just so blessed with a great team right now. I largely agree with you guys about Bush, but have a slightly different perspective. First, I understand players have to deal with the media, but that reporter exposed himself as another hack member of the media. I have probably been fined for my response for what that is worth, he says. More importantly, who is the last inside linebacker the team has drafted or signed up that has worked out well? He says, is it Shazier? He says, obviously Vince Williams before him worked out well. Is the more alarming situation that the team seems unable to draft, sign, or develop even adequate inside linebackers? I mean, Shazier'd still be playing right now, more than likely, right?
Yeah, that was a big curveball in their plans.
And he was developing.
I think he's saying that Shazier's the last example of them hitting on an inside linebacker.
Okay. Now, look, some of these other guys that they've signed as free agents have been kind of also rans and the Bostics and
Schobert and trading for Williamson.
Yeah.
Trading for Schobert.
Those guys have been pedigree ads. Kevin Colbert pedigree additions.
Right, but there's still a fair critique that they've not really found adequate replacements since Ryan Shazier. They've tried a lot of different things, and a lot of it has not worked.
Sure. And Bush is was it fair for them to ask what they asked? I didn't see any wrong with the questions that they asked Bush the other day.
Yeah, I don't know what he's referring to be honest. I don't know if that's about the fifth-year option question or what. I don't know what particular reporter you're referring to be honest with you.
Okay, I think we have got through most of them. I think we got caught up here on the emails as far as I can see. If I missed any of your emails recently, resend them, folks. We try to get to them as many as we can. I think we're about an hour and a half on this show right now, which is about what we kind of want these things, I think, to be moving forward here. So, Alex, anything else to add before we get out of here for the weekend?
No, I think that covers it well. We'll come back Monday and recap the preseason game and everything that happened over the weekend.
All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. For $25, you can get an ad-free version of the site. So in the meantime, until Monday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.